Hello, Internet. I figured it's been a long time since I've done a live stream, and just hitting 100,000 subscribers. I was like, you know what, this is as good of an excuse as I'm gonna have. So, figured just go ahead, just spend some time doing a chat and talking, answering any questions or that sort of thing. No real agenda here. Just figure we do a chat. A few questions have been coming in so far, so that is cool. I can get straight to it. And what was this one? Buko R. Question. What's the one valuable piece of advice you as an experienced keeper would tell your first starting out younger self in terms of running the game? Well, I just did a video over that. The one piece I would say is you are going to mess up. That is inevitable. Just roll with it, learn from it, and don't forget to have fun. One of the things a lot of times when a game master is starting off, they kind of get themselves so twisted up in knots that having fun they somehow forget about, even though that's the whole reason we do it. So just you're going to make some mistakes and roll with it, but don't forget to have fun. Let's see what else. Yeah, I can see them, but Chaselander, how did you find and get into Traveler? Well, actually, I was tipped off on it by Matthew Spranch of Mongoose. I did a review for Paranoia, and he hit me up saying he enjoyed that review, and he sent me Traveler. Just to see if I'd review it. And I told him, I don't review something unless I play it, and I'm not going to play it unless I think it is something my players and I would enjoy. So he said he's confident in his game, so he sent it to me, and I read it, and by God, it looked like it was something that we would enjoy, so we ended up playing it. And currently, I'm playing in a game of Traveler, finally getting to play it instead of running it. With Glass Cannon. We're doing a series called Voyagers of the Jump. We just did or recorded the episode last night. I think those are going to start streaming. I think they just announced those are going to start up after Gen Con because Glass Cannon's schedule is getting full. So, but I am doing a game with them that'll go on for 10 to 12 episodes or so is the guesstimate. So, but no, I found out about it from the publisher. That's one of the few cases that anybody actually ever sent me a game, and it ended up being one that I absolutely loved. Oh, well, Salient Divine. Oh, congratulations to Glass Cannon. Well, thank you. Those guys are a blast. Thomas, what do I think of Savage Worlds? And thank you for the awesome content. Never played Savage Worlds. I don't have any opinion about it one way or the other. I have been told by multiple people it is something that would probably be right up my alley, but it's just, number of games, amount of time that I have, so we just haven't done it. Let's see. Omenau, question. What innovative mechanics have you stolen to use in other systems? Oh man, I've stolen the hell out of inspiration from 5th edition D&D. I've used that in Traveler, used that in Cult. My buddy George, who's been running kind of an on again, off again Cyberpunk Red game, he stole that as well. So the inspiration mechanic is probably my most stolen mechanic to go across all systems. Only reason we never used it in Conan is Conan already has its own type of mechanic that already filled that void. Let's see. Bossman, thank you for the $5. Seth, I can't make it because of work. Definitely watch it later. Oh, okay. I started a new Call of Cthulhu game after Orient Express. Thanks for all the advice you give. Man, I really want to do Orient Express. I've got the box sets like just below the camera right there. Eventually, one day, the giant campaigns like that I always find kind of intimidating, just because I'm always like, it's going to take like 2 years to run, and I don't know what mood we'll be in 10 months from now. So it's one of the big reasons I don't do them very often. Chris Bates, what is your favorite era to play Call of Cthulhu? I really do dig the 20s 30s era. I think they're fun. I think there's a lot there that you can work with. I've been feeling a lot more appeal recently for modern day, just to kind of mix things up because once you get to add technology like cell phones and whatnot, that really changes the landscape of what kind of adventures you can do, what sort of assets, and what sort of threats that you have available to you. Yeah, I actually was just answering a question about this yesterday about cell phones and Call of Cthulhu, and a lot of people think it's like, well, that takes away the horror, and it's like, oh no, it can add quite a bit because very often in Call of Cthulhu. Or in just a lot of games, like especially with stuff like Cyberpunk and whatnot, the bad guys often have you know better technology than the player characters. And if it's modern day and they're just normal bad guys, they're probably going to have the same technology as the player characters, which means that they can use that against the PCs as well, and that actually does add another layer to threat. Especially if they're able to get any sort of trackers on the PC's phones or anything like that. That kind of adds a new level of risk there. My favorite example, like to give, would be if a character is hiding from a cultist and they fail their stealth roll, instead of just saying like, oh, you're clumsy and you make a bunch of noise, you could have it's like, okay, well, you're hiding under this table, and the bad guys step in the room and you see their feet moving, and it's clear that they don't see you, and all of a sudden the phone in your pocket goes off and it's a spam caller asking about your car's extended warranty, and now the cultists are onto you. So there's a lot of new things you could actually do once you incorporate technology. So the modern era has been appealing to me a lot more. However, when Cthulhu by Gaslight finally comes out for 7th edition, I am probably going to jump on that because I've been wanting to try that. I've been wanting to do Hudson and Brand by Stygian Fox for years, so I've really just been kind of in a holding pattern, waiting for Gaslight. So I'll probably do that the moment it comes out, or at least wrap up whatever campaign we're on, and then flip to that once we finished up that campaign. Let's see. What's my favorite kind of cheese? Man, my favorite cheese, like snacking cheese that I had in a while. And they don't sell it anymore at my grocery store. Was a horseradish cheddar. Man, that stuff was freaking awesome. And about a year and a half ago, it just kind of vanished. So one day, I'll find a suitable replacement. Let's see. Alex F question: do I still play games the AD&D 1E rules? I don't. We just stopped playing D&D altogether. We ended up going off to skill-based games some time ago. We did AD&D. I think we really wrapped that up about the end of 2008, but I had been playing it since 91, so I gave it 17 years. And I've done a couple games since then where I wasn't running it. I just kind of joined in a few sessions here and there. But if I was going to go back to D&D, I would actually probably go 5th edition. As many complaints as I have, and I have quite a bit. I think it's actually probably the cleanest and the most approachable of them. But I'm just not really interested in D&D anymore. I've kind of been there, done that, and I'm off to other things. Let's see. Scott Knudsen, thank you for the $10. I always say super chats aren't needed, but thanks for helping. For prepping viral as a fun adventure. To run as a one shot. I haven't checked out the expanded edition. Bud and Alex, evidently they just did an update with like 14 more pages of stuff. Some of it was taking into advice, some of my advice that I did on my review video. But I don't know what all they took. I mean, some of it they probably weren't able to work in just because you can't work everything in. And of course, they had their own things that they were looking into adding. So I need to pick that up and do that and just kind of read through it before I see Bud in a few weeks at Gen Con. But that was a cool adventure, and doing the live chat feed as a way to encourage the investigators through it was fucking brilliant, man. That was That was awesome. That's a wonderful example of how you can incorporate technology into a horror game and actually increase the horror. So good luck with it. It was fun. JB, I'd watch a 2-hour movie about Jack the NPC. Man, I don't know what it would be. It would probably just be him like just sitting around griping, killing a bottle of whiskey or whatever. Yeah, Jack's an interesting character, but let's see what else we've got here. You should need a break from Infinite Jest. What is the first Seth Skorkowski novel to read in a small Spanish town from Normative? Huh. It depends what you like. When it comes to my fiction, I actually have several different types that I do. If you're into sword and sorcery, my Black Raven series is very pulpy sword and sorcery thief adventures, and those are collections of short stories just following this rogue. And I kind of ran through the tropes like a checklist. I mean, I absolutely embraced all the old pulp tropes. It's kind of like my love letter to a lot of the Fritz Leiber stories, Swafford and Grey Mouser. So there's that, and then with my novels, Dameron, which is the first of my Valdekin series, which hold on, Dameron, which is the first of my Valdekin series. It's a modern day monster hunting urban fantasy with action adventure sort of thing, and that one actually does have a portion that does get set in Spain. It kind of becomes a world hopping adventure as they're chasing monsters. And then the other one I do is Ashes of Onyx, and that's just a single novel, and that is a new weird. So it's kind of a portal fantasy. So it starts off like an urban fantasy, and then it's quickly changes all of a sudden to a portal fantasy epic. It's kind of like, I don't know, that one's more like my love letter to a lot of novels that were very impactful on me. So it's got a little bit of Clive Barker's Magica, King's Dark Tower series, and Gibson's Neuromancer. Probably like the top three inspirations for where a lot of that material came from. So it just kind of depends whatever you like. Craft wise, I would say Ashes is the best written. Just straight up enjoyability, the Valdekin series starting with Dameron is the most popular. So I'll probably go with that one if I was just going to say one. But hope you enjoy whichever you get. Let's see. Rears X. By the way, I can't pronounce anything. See, will ever do any more war story videos? Yes. The thing is, I actually bought all the props to do a war story months ago. I just need to get off my butt and do it because it is going to be very technically difficult to film, and it's not it doesn't lead up to a single joke like the Bonesaw has, or Fourth Thor definitely has, or Scott Brown incident, where there's kind of like this moment where it's like you're like and it is actually more of kind of it's a kind of a longer story about two of my players that are not the best role players. They don't really get into the role play. They're much more tactical, planning and whatnot. And they're very good players. They don't really get into character and do voices all that much. And it was when we actually flipped over to Call of Cthulhu, both of them dropped an epic character in my lap at the exact same time. And that was because they're cousins, and they kind of have a straight man, crazy man dynamic that they do. It actually all happened by accident because they had no idea. They gave their characters that had a lot of similarities, but they gave them the same last name. And I didn't bother telling them that until the first session began. And they some of the best characters ever, but it was non-role players that ended up having this amazing dynamic, and it happened through this kind of odd circumstance. So not the most exciting war story, but it's a story that I love. So I should get around to it. That one's gonna be difficult because I'm gonna have to be playing two characters on screen as Jack at the same time, which means I have to like time the back and forth dialogue, and I keep finding other things to do because I'm kind of putting that one off because it's going to be a technical nightmare. But I've done it before, but doesn't encourage me to do it. Let's see. Is that a Call of Cthulhu Anniversary reprint box back there from Standing Wave Studio? Yes. I just figured I'd pick one up. I wanted like a physical copy of the auction and other tales and some of the other stuff. So I figured, hey, what the hell, let's do it. Let's see. Canvaros. Thank you for the $10. Hey, Seth, I'm considering playing a PC in Call of Cthulhu who is a Black member of the Harlem Hellfires of World War One. But I'm white. Are there any things I should keep in mind while playing to avoid any icky stuff? Be true to the character. One of the things with a lot of people to really look into wanting to do a 1920s or a 1930s setting, and you're looking at the racism at the time is, talk to your keeper about it, since you're saying you're going to be a player, and find out how much that's going to be in there. In my games, it is there, but we really don't show it. So I'm not going to like have it where the player character can't get into this place that the PCs need to get into or something. I'm not actually going to basically penalize them for wanting to play a Black character, a Jewish character, or anything. Now, if I do have like a failed roll, like a failed persuade roll or something, I might use that as a justification, like, oh, well, it failed because they're racist. But it's more of that's just the result of a roll, which they had already failed. But it's not anything that I'm really going to penalize characters with. But just be respectful of the character. Don't try to make the character a farce, and do that. You might want to check out Chris Spivey's Harlem Unbound, because he actually does talk a lot about that in there, and might be able to give you some insight in order to do it, where you can play the character and not feel icky about it, but have fun. Let's see. I'm curious if you have any thoughts on other RPG YouTubers. Let's see. I've enjoyed watching Colville. Even when he and I disagree, I enjoy kind of his take on it. There's a couple things I'll agree with, other things I think I agree with, but I don't necessarily agree with the way he phrased it. And then there's ones I don't agree with, but all in all, I enjoy him. Dan, Professor Dungeon Master, is awesome. I enjoy him a lot. Bud's RPG review. I like Bud. I personally like Bud. So I check those guys out the most. Occasionally, I will end up watching others. Basically, if there is a topic that I'm working on, I'll see what other people said, and sometimes I was like, oh, I don't want to kind of help with phrasing or anything like that. But really, those are the only ones that I'll just click on them regularly versus I kind of see them and I'm like, oh, that looks neat, and never get around to watching it. Logan McQuaid, thank you for the $5. Thank you for introducing me to Traveler. Favorite game. Hope to hear more of your adventures. I am working on a Traveler review right now. I actually just finished the script yesterday, and I think I'm done with all the image slides. That actually takes several days to get the script and the image slides that show up all done. I usually end up still making a bunch of them when I'm recording it, because once I actually see it and I'm kind of looking at it and go, oh, this would be a good time to put an image of that, and I'll have to quickly make some slides. So that one, I'll probably record it this weekend, maybe Sunday, since we're gaming Saturday. So if I can, it should be up next week. And that will be over not just an adventure. It is, hold on, I actually brought it over here just in case anybody asked what my next video would be. Islands in the Rift, which is this like really short module, but the problem is it's not a module, it's actually a campaign. That's this tiny little package, but you pretty much need the Great Rift box set in order to do it. We played that for a year, and during the course of it, as they're flying through the island subsectors, which is my favorite little portion of the Traveler universe, of these two subsectors in the Great Rift, I dropped in a lot of other adventures along the way because they have to basically recover a lost spy ship and get it through this kind of like hostile Cold War territory with all these different nations that are kind of like doing covert stuff against each other. And the travelers are basically flying kind of a U-Haul sort of ship that's got all the spy equipment built into it throughout that. So it's got a lot of intrigue, but a lot of the adventures that are viewed, mostly the Amber Zone adventures, were done during the course of that campaign. So I'm going to talk about that one because when we first started Traveler, I picked up a couple modules. It's kind of like reading, kind of an idea what it was like, and that was one of the first ones I read. And I thought, this is brilliant. I want to do this. I am not ready for it yet. My players aren't ready for that. So when we actually did our first campaign, which was the one that had the mystery of BT SHT 365 that I did as the review diary, when we made those characters, I told them straight out, it's like, once we're done with this, we can begin the campaign that I really want to do. And so when we wrapped that up, we then played this kind of Cold War spy mission, and that was a good one. So I'll talk about that hopefully next week. Let's see. Let's see this. George, mostly off again lately. You'll get to it, man. I'm not worried. Question: favorite indie game? My current favorite indie game. Nice caveat. I don't know how much it's an indie game. I think it is. I'm 98% sure it's an indie game. I'm loving the hell out of Cult Divinity Lost, man. That is a cool game. I'm enjoying it. It uses the Powered by the Apocalypse system. I'm looking forward to getting to play another Powered by the Apocalypse horror game at Gen Con. I picked it up and I read it and I was like, I'm gonna have to see this in action. And that's Bluebeard's Bride. But as far as games I've been enjoying playing is Cult Divinity Lost, which is so not for everyone. That game is exceptionally dark and really requires a really high level of trust between the players and the game master and everyone involved. Not just because of the subject matter, but because of just how the Powered by the Apocalypse system works. You need players that want to have a narrative focused type of rule set because it is really squishy compared to any of the other games that we've played. It's kind of really introduced us to that style of play, and I've enjoyed it despite the bumps at the very beginning, which whenever my players were like, I'm not really sure about this, I always say, like, guys, I don't think it's the system. I think it's me. I'm an old dog learning new tricks here. And they stuck it out with me, and we've been enjoying it. So that's it, Cole. Cristobal Sanchez. Love your Call of Cthulhu one-shot rules reviews. Looking forward to Mask in the Nyarlathotep. I haven't played it. A lot of people ask, like, when I'm going to review Mass. I haven't played it, and just due to my review policy, that I'd have to do that first. I mean, I did play the Peru chapter, which is the kind of prequel chapter that they did, and I did that with the How We Roll podcast under Scott Dorward, and that was a lot of fun. But that's the adventure. It happens before the adventure, and Mass is just such a huge thing that yes, I'm not going to be able to like drop that in like I would like a one shot scenario. If we did decide to commit to the long haul of playing it, it would probably be done more like a review diary, which I did with Two Headed Serpent, where it was broken up as a series. But I don't know. Right now, I've just been enjoying just kind of doing our episodic style games. Simon Montoya, did I play your GM, the Disintegrator from the Pulp Cthulhu book? Yes, we did play it. Haven't reviewed it yet. I ran it. Had a lot of fun. It is, I don't know. We didn't have any problems with it. The bad guy is okay. One of the bad guys is absolutely horrifically tough, but it was very dramatic when the reveal happened, because when he shows up, the PCs are like, "That's the villain." There's no hiding. The guy is a villain. Uh, don't even, don't worry about that. It's very clear. But what he is still extremely shocking, because that is not what they're going to expect. So that one we ended up having a lot of fun. Very nearly lost to PC on that one, and that was just to just a spectacular series of weird decisions and terrible rolls that culminated right at the climax, like they always do. When it's not the climax, the PCs are rolling great, and then once the big battle starts up, all of a sudden their dice are just like, screw this, and interesting things happened. But that was nothing with the adventure itself. So we had fun with it. I will review it eventually. I don't know when, but that one's in the bag, and we had fun. JB for Thor. God, that was such a weird game. I'm glad you guys actually enjoyed that story. I always wonder when I do war stories, like maybe this isn't going to be as amusing to people that weren't there. Let's see. Magonis with a Gaston image. Thank you for the $5. Um, Thank you for helping simply normalize other RPGs. D&D rather needlessly has a grip on the TTRPG world, and you single-handedly bring a lot into view. Thank you. I actually really do like showing people a lot of the other games that are out there, and I don't have anything against D&D. I think the popularity of D&D actually feeds the rest of the industry, and history has shown that over the years. Um, yeah, I actually had to explain to some friends of mine in the UK, which is Bud from Bud's RPG Review and Pookie and a few of those guys, because they were asking one day why D&D was so popular in the US when, about around the same time in the UK, Runequest was the king, and explained it was the Satanic Panic, and when all of a sudden the game pops up on on Oprah in 60 Minutes and all that stuff, and it suddenly becomes a household name. And the D&D sales exploded because of that. If you actually look at the charts of sales, like right when the Satanic Panic anti D&D stuff happened, like they couldn't print those books fast enough. So it really comes down to the very public push that tried to destroy it actually is what made it a household name. So take that, bad, which was Bothered About Dungeons and Dragons, and by Pat Pulling. You should check that group out, and some of the stuff that they claimed D&D did about driving you insane into a murderer. Uh, let's see. If you've got questions, please, please, please just put question in all caps. That way I can see it. Let's see. Liberty Avalanche. If you don't like D&D anymore, which system would you use to scratch that particular itch? Well, it depends on what you mean by the itch. If it's a high combat game, because D&D, I think most popular RPGs is still very combat focused, and I would probably do. I don't know. We always did cyberpunk as our other way of doing it. If it's fantasy, I don't know. I haven't really come across another kind of like classic fantasy setting with swords and horses and castles and all that that really draws to me. But part of it is I did that for so long that it's really hasn't been anything that I've like had a huge itch to return to. We did try Conan out for a little while, and uh, Conan was a game. I've got a very long review on it where we liked it at any point we weren't really playing it. I never felt comfortable with that rule set. Some people that have felt comfortable with it absolutely love it, but I was not one of them. So We did get a little bit of our kind of classic fantasy itch with that, but after a few sessions, like I start getting the wandering eye and start wanting something else. So I haven't really found anything that I would just play if I wanted to like recapture that feeling of D&D and say this is definitely what it is, because just just haven't found it, but I'm not really looking. Um, has anyone ever played Cthulhu by Gaslight? Not eventually worked Jack the Ripper into it. Um, I haven't played it. Well, I also have a single con game once. I am actually going to try to go out of my way not to, just because that's such a common thing, at least in that sort of the horror fiction that's set in that era. But I don't know. Maybe it'll still happen. Maybe like I tried not to, and Jack the Ripper still popped up. But let's see. Jason, will I ever do some more or do some WG Star Wars reviews? Don't know. Basically, it depends on getting to play it. I did pick up Star Wars with kind of the intention of wanting to play it because a friend of mine's been running us through the Fantasy Flight one, which I'm not a fan of, and so I wanted to pick up the D6 Star Wars and try to run him through some of that. So it depends. If we do any scenarios, then we'll probably review any scenarios, but I don't know. A lot of the scenarios at the time always kind of assume that the player characters are with the rebellion. So we're probably going to be something a lot more like Edge of the Empire, but with a different system. Speaking of Star Wars, Left-Handed Jedi, thank you for the $5. Congratulations on the 100K. Thank you. Keep up the great work. I hope to. I'm kind of amazed at how this has all worked. Let's see. And Hugami, thank you for 5 years working the combat for D&D 2e. Make it more often than rolling dice. I enjoyed. I had a lot of fun with 1e 2e, but it's not our big thing. Aaron Thomas, thank you for $10. But am I going to Necronomicon this year? No, and I need to. I actually found out that like an old friend of mine from way back in the day has just moved to Providence. So like now I've got like, even more reason that I need to go to Necronomicon. Matt McLeod, why are you paying money, Matt? Hopefully, I'll see you at JCon, man. Reed Kellogg, I think the 10. Chris, congrats on 100K. Have you thought about your thoughts of Palladium? Never read Palladium. I used to kind of flip through their books way back when at Barnes and Noble and look at the art, but that was about it. That was at the time where I would only play D&D, and like I considered everything else kind of a wannabe. So I really refused to actually kind of acknowledge other RPGs other than looking at their art. So that was kind of me during the 90s. Shane Sabin, are you going to ever remake Blackwater Creek Review like you did for The Haunting? I need to. On the list of videos that I need to remake, which I consider anything that was done in the first 6 months of the channel kind of like up for a potential remake, because those were also rough. Blackwater Creek is the number one that I want to do. I always just feel real weird about revisiting videos, and it's been over a year since I did my last remake, so I probably could get away with it. I always want to keep like enough space between them. That way it's not like all of a sudden just a bunch of recycled content, even if I'm adding more to it and doing it better. So whenever I get in the mood to do another remake, Blackwater Creek will be the next one. I just don't know when that'll be. Ryan A. Smith, favorite traveler videos. It was a big help for my time self-understanding it. By far the best on YouTube. Ship's name is To Be Frank. No problem. What's crazy though is if you ever want to learn the rule system to a game, like just get all the rules down, try to do a giant video series on it, because I think I learned more making that series just through the process, because I want to make sure I got stuff right. I still missed a couple things. The comments will always point that out. And then I did kind of like my end video where it's like, hey, there's some mistakes I made. But it's a really cool system. And the only thing that makes it complicated is certain parts Mongoose didn't phrase the easiest, but also it's like so big. It's like you've got combat, okay, and then you have ship to ship combat, which is like a different thing, and there's just like so many moving parts that while the rules themselves aren't complicated, there's just a lot of different parts to it. So, God, though, we loved it. Traveler is so fun. So I'm glad you enjoyed it, man. Glad it was helpful with you getting the rules. Let's see. Oh, wow. Grammatical Publishing, thank you for $100. Jesus. Just launched our one night horror RPG and Kickstarter, hugely inspired by your journey and your breakdown of Cherry to the Gods. Well, no problem. Cherry of the Gods was fun, but man, that was a long adventure if you actually do everything in it. Yeah, I think it was designed, they said, for like a 4-hour session. And hearing people talk about it, that took them 16 hours to do is pretty regular. I think it took us like 20 or so that I said at the time. So that was it was a fun game, but it ended up being a lot longer than it promised to be. CT Taylor, will I be at Chaos Con next year? I hope so. I don't see any reason why I won't be unless schedules don't align. But yeah, I'll try to come back to that one next year. I had a lot of fun. Yeah, hopefully next year we have grown and improved because it was just the first year last time. But I enjoyed it a lot, so I hope to go back. Hopefully for 2023. So most likely, I guess, will be my answer. Okay. Gilherm, I know I mispronounced that. I am sorry. I've been taking some of your advice for my game, Karu Descent. That's here's my old dyslexia kicking in. Brazilian system. They've been really helpful. Good. I've heard from a lot of people, or people have looked at. Sometimes I'll talk about different rules or different things like that, and they can then kind of steal that and apply that to their own game, and it's helpful. So I'm glad. So even though I've never played that game, I'm glad you're able to find something in my videos that could help you with it. Let's see, and we're about half an hour in, so good. Okay. Question: we consider putting a list of links to podcasts you've been on YouTube community post to your channel? I probably should. And that was Coal Soak, by the way. Um, I'm on the Modern Mythos podcast, but I think the last one that I was a guest on was Snyder's Return. We did that last week, and then did another one before that. Whenever I've done ones where they're on a video, I actually have a playlist of videos, but I don't know. I always feel weird like posting links in the community, even like that's what it's for, to be like, hey, I'm on this podcast doing an interview or whatnot. Because I don't know. I don't want to spam anybody. So like I only post something like every 5 months, which is probably way too little. So I can see what I can do. See. James Chambers, hey man, am I meeting up with Bud Pookie and Scott Gen Con? God, I hope so. That's the plan. Maybe we can get in a little bit of trouble together or something. VS thought on the gumshoe system. No thoughts. I've actually only ever played one game that uses the gumshoe rules, and it was like a modified version where we played the Yellow King, and it was, I don't know, it was okay. I didn't really have any thoughts about it one way or the other. It worked. We had fun, but it wasn't like something that I would drop any of our current games and say we got to play this. So it was fine. But that was also the Yellow King's version of the gumshoe system. So I haven't played it like Trail of Cthulhu or anything like that. see. Oh, the Cosmic. What's a game system you really like the idea of, but never ended up playing or just never took off? Um, I think the king of those was I spent, geez, probably about 10 years really wanting to do a game of Mech Warrior. But we kind of like, I wanted to kind of like ignore the battle tech part of the universe, like the battle mechs, and I really just wanted them to like have a drop ship and be a bunch of smugglers, and very kind of like Han Solo-ish sort of thing, and that never ever really gained traction with it. So that's kind of my king of ones that I talked about a lot. And I got all the books and I got all this planning done, and then it just never really went anywhere. I think I played like a test game or two with a player to kind of figure out the rules, and then it just kept getting backburnered. And we really got a lot of that out of my system finally when we did Traveler many years later, because I think I started kind of fantasizing about that Muck Warrior game probably like 97, 98. So, 15, 16 years later, I got to play Traveler. So I finally got to do something that did do it. So I'd say that was the king of them for me. Let's see, Gordon Z, putting the haunting in the 1980s. Any suggestions? Not really. Technology wise, I mean, we don't have like cell phones or anything like that to really deal with. If you're wanting to do it like a kids on bikes style game where they're kids, that could be interesting. The what was it called? The Dare had that really cool system for playing kids with Call of Cthulhu. But if you are going to do just regular adults in the 1980s, there's not really any significant change I can think of that really kind of like make that dramatically different, either good or bad. So have fun. Let's see. Hoystein. Let's see. Whoa. Oh, cool to see humans as ants. Don't care about skin color. Really should be a non-faction. Let's do a lot of mundane stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's part of what I was talking about with the gentleman wanted to play a kind of the Harlem Hellfighters in a Call of Cthulhu game. We really don't make any big deal about it, and cultists have other things that they hate. So, Crinizium, do I know of any good setting agnostic skill based fantasy games? No. I've heard people Savage Worlds gets thrown out, but I never read Savage Worlds, so I don't even know how true that is. But no, I don't know of any really good system agnostic ones. Runequest is pretty neat. It's based off of the BRP system, same system that Call of Cthulhu uses, but that one is very tied to its world. So it's it would require a significant amount of cutting in order to make that set in a different world. So that definitely wouldn't fall into it. So no, not really. Okay. Oh, Carol Sykes. How long does it usually take to film the game sessions with the three PCs, especially the longer sessions, not just a single choke with Todd? A couple hours. So whenever I do them, of course, it requires, got to do the costume switches, move the camera around, kind of set anything up. It's usually around Todd. You don't really see what's in front of Mike or Dweebles unless they're holding it in their hand. But to kind of go through their portion of the script, try to get a few takes of everything. Hopefully, one of them works right, because sometimes I don't realize that the tone or the inflection isn't working. Very often, if I get the inflection perfect, and it's like, oh, this is so good, that's not like my tongue will get tied on me and I can't use it. But I don't know. I think on a standard video versus one of like the really long ones, like one of the gang videos, I'd say if I do it and I don't like take a break between each one, because sometimes I just procrastinate between each character, it will be an hour and a half, 2 hours to go through all that. If it's something like the last gang video that I did, that took all day. And then, of course, it also matters if the game master character is going to be involved in that, because that's the fourth. So, but I basically do all the cuts for each character in one sitting. So even so on a video, even though I might have him playing multiple games throughout it, like every time you see Todd, there's like different books in front of him. I just do this one after another, then move the camera and do Mike and Dweebles. And it's figured that'd be kind of obvious, but so yeah, it takes quite a while. It just depends on how much they're doing. And I don't know, editing is actually like the easiest part. It takes a long time. And the part that's the hardest to edit with them is if they're not actually talking, I'm actually just kind of showing them. And I'm whatever I'm saying in the video, I'm yammering about whatever, and it's kind of showing them sitting around. And sometimes I try to time it to where they might say something of whatever I'm talking about. Those are actually the hardest to do because I kind of have to like listen to the footage of the audio of what I'm saying and find a good clip where I did it, and where I'm usually just kind of mouthing nonsense and put that in. That takes the longest, even though I don't know. I think from the outside that would look like it's the simplest, but it's actually the hardest part. Because what are you, grats on the 100K? Hey man, thank you. Thank you for the $5. I actually just got my confirmation in that I could order my silver plaque today, so that should be hopefully a few weeks. Let's note. What has been my favorite non D&D system setting? Call of Cthulhu 7th Edition uh, is, uh, is my favorite game, especially with the Pulp Cthulhu mod because it makes the PCs a little bit beefier. That is my current favorite thing, and it's been that way since I think 2016. We've played several other games in the meantime. We've enjoyed them. We've had a lot of fun, but Call of Cthulhu 70 has always kept the title as my favorite. So that's it. As far as setting, I mean, that's just I think we played the most 1920s. Our current game is now in the 30s, and that's just because we that campaign has gone on so long that we can no longer. We have to just say it's moved to the 30s. We can't keep kind of doing our little time kind of squishiness of like, okay, yeah, guys, it's been like 15 years you've been doing this. Let's see. Oh, it's Matt McLeod talking about someone about the cult rules. Let's see. Steve Honadel, hopefully I pronounced that correctly. Question: can you exert your clout with Chaosium to get them to update Gaslight to 7E? Okay, so Mike Mason has been hinting at the 7E update for Gaslight for a couple of years now, and we've they've released images of the maps, so we know there's maps. That is being worked on. I think their most recent announcement is, I think they're really just giving that the editing pass and finalizing the art. It is going to be 2 books, and it will not require the Call of Cthulhu Keeper's Guide. Like you would just pick up Cthulhu by Gaslight, which is a 2-book set, and that's all you need. At Chaosium Con, when I saw him, I called, kind of waved him over to say hi because it's been a couple of years since we've seen each other face to face, and he was initially kind of like, "What are you like? Give me the update on what he was sure I was going to ask about," which I can't talk about that, but he was thought I was going to ask about the publishing update on something else, and I was like, no, don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. You'll give me the update whenever it's ready, and I need to get to this part. But what's going on with Cthulhu by Gaslight Man? But that was like my very first question. So he has said hopefully by the end of this year, early next year, but I've heard that before, so who knows? Chaosium doesn't really publish what their expected publication dates will be, just because there are so many moving parts that it's super easy to miss any of those deadlines, and they don't want people to like, be like, you promised to be out at this time, and or then they feel committed and they have to rush and get out an inferior product. So I've been told it's mostly done, but who knows? We'll know when it comes. So, but there's nothing more I can do. it's just keep reminding Mike, man, I'm waiting. I've been waiting for a long time. Georgios are greetings from Greece. Oh, hello. What are my thoughts on Runequest, or my opinion on Runequest? It's neat. It never really the world of Glorantha does not really like suck me in. So part of my opinion with that is just I'm not. I don't have the same fascination with the world that a lot of other people do, and I never had that. Even when I was dire into D&D, I never really got into a lot of the world lores. We just made up our own worlds. So the system itself is pretty neat. It's still pretty brutal. It is a super brutal system because it's using BRP. So characters can get taken out very quickly, which I like. But if I think with people who are wanting something more like D&D, where you've got like just you're so powerful and dying is very difficult to do. I don't know how well that's received by them, just because Runequest is pretty different in that regards. But I don't have any problems with it. Just not really my thing. So, Geekdomo. Unless different games running Alien RPG right now. That's fun. Man, Alien is cool. Alien is super duper cool. That's the Free League really captured the feel of the Alien films. Cyberspace. Why did you give us such a high rating? 2 out of 5 stars for the Cyberpunk 2020 novel, The Ravagers. Okay, yeah, that novel was pretty bad, but I don't know. It was like the only time I'd ever read any sort of like fiction about the 2020 universe. But yeah, the 2 Cyberpunk novels that they did back in the 90s were pretty rough. But Ravagers, I think, was the better one. That was one with was it Bite Boy and Bite Girl? I think were their names, which is kind of weird. I would remember that because it's been well over 20 years. But 2 out of 5 is fair. But I consider more like a 1.8 rounding out. One of those are Chloe mentioning Crimson Letters. Any chance of a review? And that was from Alex. Eventually, we did Crimson Letters earlier this year, and that was a cool game. Where you've got the GM has to determine who the bad guy is. So I do like that. They did that with a Traveler Murder Actor Station, which I gloat about. So I enjoyed that feature to it. We had fun. We had to add a little bit just due to how it went in our game. So whenever I do get around to reviewing it, I'll do it. Yeah, I might. Sometimes I'll sit on an adventure after I've done it for a while before I kind of feel the inspiration of like, this is the review I want to talk about next. Partially because I also like to kind of spread them out, because if I didn't, they would end up being very back to back, like wherever like 3 months or only do Call of Cthulhu reviews, and I don't know, that'd feel kind of monotonous. So I do intentionally spread a lot of that stuff out. That way, it's not just back to back to back the exact same subject. So yes, I will review it. Don't know when. not even sure what my next Call of Cthulhu review will be. I've read a few that I need to do. See, Rodrigo. One reason I got into Call of Cthulhu, planning my first ever campaign to start in a couple weeks. Cheers from Brazil. Good luck on the campaign, and happy that any of my weird ramblings or anything you found helpful. But best of luck with the campaign, and I hope you guys have a lot of fun. Here's Dicergens. Yeah, I'm not. I have no idea how to pronounce that, sir. But question was your opinion of OSR games like Dungeon Crawl Classics. No opinion of them. I haven't played them, so and I don't feel like a call to pick them up just because I don't know. I have other stuff I want to do other than kind of classic dungeon crawl sort of games. So I don't have any opinion on them. Ricky Mori won. Hey man, you've been here. You've been around since I think probably my first 100 subs. Question: any chance you do more ancient games, just like ancient is in like long out of print stuff? I don't know. I usually will talk about different adventures that I ran, and I'll usually talk about whatever edition that I ran it in. So with D&D, I used to talk about first edition because I ran it when I was playing first edition. But usually when I do a game review, I'll talk about whatever the current edition is, just because I find that better. I did Cyberpunk 2020, but at the time, Cyberpunk 2020 was technically the current edition. So I don't know. So I might have some older adventures I do, but system wise, not really. Nice flare. Let's see. We have some planning to run their first Call of Cthulhu game. Play twice. Wants to make his own pre-gens, mod a pre-written module. Players are a bit nervous about this. Any tips? Well, as long as the characters that they're making are appropriate, which that's one of the big reasons that keepers want to make the characters for the module, is just to make sure that there are appropriate skills. So, and if they're new to Call of Cthulhu, that's totally understandable. So I wouldn't worry. If let them kind of tweak out the characters the way they want, that way they're appropriate. That way one or more of them have skills that would be very useful for it. And that way we don't have a bunch of people kind of sitting there's like, no one can do this thing because none of us thought we would need ancient Greek or some other skill like that. So trust the keeper. See, hopefully they do a good job with it. But the players probably don't need to worry. But it also kind of depends on just how good the keeper is at it. But also, it sounds like it's going to be just a single adventure, like a module. So it's not like it's going to be a full campaign. So probably more like a one shot. That's fine. Boxing in the Nook. Hey, Pokey. Question. Will I return to play the sequel to Viral? Well, if Bud'll have me, yeah, of course I will. Dustin, when will we get more war stories? I already answered that one. When I get off my butt is the answer to that one. Really, the only thing holding me back is just procrastination. And these question: do I play CRPGs? Any thoughts of good ones? No. Sorry. Oh, kind of share what are some of the ways I've spiced up Call of Cthulhu and PC. I say player character, not personal computer. Well, yeah, I've talked about that just in my huge series on that of different things we might do. We'll do handouts and whatnot. I always try to tweak an adventure so it fits the characters. So like this Saturday, I'm doing the Goodman Games adventure. I doubt we'll finish it in one session, but doing the Goodman Games Age of Cthulhu Shadows over Leningrad. And I've had to go through the hook that gets everybody involved and customize it for every character. So that way it kind of explains why they're there and gives them all kind of their own personal missions to go. That is really the best thing I could really advise if you want to get the players really invested is all of them have a separate reason to go, like their own agendas. So I think that one of them's probably going to go recover this little girl. Another's going to be looking at some art because they're employed by a big art collector doing that, and another might go for the mythos hook, and the other works for Miskatonic. So that is kind of where we did, and we did the same thing. We just did Angel's Tears from the Cults of Cthulhu book, and I had to send all the player characters to Los Angeles for that adventure, and each of them had their own reasons to go to LA as well. So that's really the best way I can recommend really spicing it up is change what you need to in the scenario or adventure so that it fits the player characters, and that way they feel they feel like they have a reason they're supposed to be pursuing this. And it's best if they're not all the same as one another. Just Seth's wondering his eyes is recurring sin. Man, at first I thought you meant like they've got a lazy eye. It's like, oh God, no, my wandering game to game, yeah. My players get mad. I'm actually looking very soon at doing Righteous Blood and Ruthless Blades as a palate cleanser once we're done with Cthulhu. Wasting, have I checked out Mindjammer? No, sorry, I haven't checked it out. So, yeah, this thing is like flipping around. Okay. Kevin, thank you for the $5. 100K. I've got 5 kids to feed, 4 kids to feed. I got a pair of cats, man, and it's my wife, but my cats are my children, I suppose. So, and they do need food. They scream every morning. One of them screams, the other doesn't talk. Let's see, William Passing, thank you. Thank you for 100K subs. It's kind of nice to have that goal done. And when as you're getting closer, you're like watching those numbers because you're like, oh, I'm gonna get it. And by the time I hit 100K, everyone's like, what are you gonna do? It's like, I'm actually going to spend a few weeks where I don't just watch that like a hawk. Like I just let it go and not worry about it for a bit. And that's going to be great. And it's now been a week and it's been great. So I got other stuff I can now obsess over, since I will always have something I obsess over. It's just sometimes you want to change it up from time to time. Wow. Slavin Kovacevic. I know I mispronounced that. Sorry. Any ideas on Outbreak Undead? Never played it, so just haven't played it. Sorry. Really, if I've never reviewed a game, if you want to ask if I played it, chances are probably no. Geoark Bolt got the starter set and my dice. Thank you. I hope you enjoy them. I hope the dice give you good memories and don't give you any bad ones. Let's see. While you're writing your manuscript for your novel, do I worry about grammatical formatting or do I leave that to an editor? Yes, I do worry about. I worry about the grammar, sentence, and all that. You should edit your novel as best as you are able to before you give that to an editor. So you'll want to go through, clean it up, remove any passive voice that you find and all that, and then you hand that to the editor, because then what the editor is going to do is they're going to take whatever you gave them and they're going to polish it better. But if you don't really polish it, you're actually just putting a ton of work on your editor, and the end result is probably not going to be as any good as if you had polished it to your best before you gave it to them and then let them go to town on that to make that even better. So yes, I do worry about it. Now that I every author's got their own style. So when I write my novels, as I'm writing it, I'm not worried about it. And it's full of typos and bad sentence structure and all that. It's just abysmal. And then as I am going through the process of the novel, I'm still going back and I'm fixing it. So basically, my first editing pass is a couple chapters back as I'm writing it, and so by the time I'm done, the book has mostly had its first editing pass. Because sometimes while I'm kind of procrastinating, I just like I can't think of anything to write. I go back and I kind of like fix stuff up. And then as I've got beta readers, because my beta readers are usually a couple chapters behind as I'm writing, and they're coming up with suggestions and whatnot, I'll go through and make those changes along the way. But you should have it at the best you can before you give it to an editor, and especially if you're going to be trying to get an agent or you're trying to sell the novel to a publishing house. If it doesn't look like it's been edited, they're going to pass on it. So you want to make sure it looks as nicely polished as you can do. And they know they're still going to have to edit it, but it needs to look like you've done the best you can before they do it. So, Shiv Palpatoon. Any thoughts on the new Traveler books like Mercenary and the Robot book? Have not picked up the Robot book. Mercenary was neat. I kind of flipped through it. It didn't work in the campaign we were doing at the time, so I never really deep dived into it just because it's like, if I need this, it's there. But the Robot book is one that I actually have been wanting. So, but I just haven't picked it up. And see, how far along are we? We're like a little over an hour, so I'll probably wrap this up soon. Otherwise, I get sucked in for 2 hours. See, Tal Runston looks like a two-parter. I'm the only one that wants to GM in our group, which is fine by itself. I love GMing. I understand. I enjoy GMing too. What I'm passionate about lately is OSR, but they say it sounds any horrible. Any tips? Running Pathfinder, so they're enjoying it. Yes, but I really feel like it could provide a much better game if you're more passionate about it. Okay, for that. So I've done a video on that subject, so you might want to check that out. It's over how to talk to your group about switching systems. And the simple truth is, yes, whatever game you are feeling passionate about running, you are going to most likely going to be running that better than another game that you're settling on running. This is usually where my personal wandering eye gets me in trouble, but whenever you're playing or you're running a game and you're busy things like, oh man, I'd really rather be running this, really rather be running this, you're not going to be running at your top form. You can try, but that kind of like that little passionate fire, but between sessions, and you're thinking about like, oh, what can I do for the game? You're not going to be thinking about that other game that you want to run, and so you're not going to be just having all the little times in between where you're really thinking about the current game that you're running. And if the system looks like something that's more your style, and you're kind of like not too happy with the system of whatever its limitations are. Every system has its own limitations. But what I would recommend is start off by like doing some like little practice games. Maybe what I always call combat practice sort of thing, or do some kind of like little one shots to get a little bit of playtime in, because if it's not something that you have run, at least let you see if this is something you actually want to run, but also gets your players a little used to it, because if you're kind of pulling them off for like a little side game, that sort of deal, it can at least help get them into it. But really the best method that I found, if you've hit the point that you really need to switch, is sell it to them and talk about the fact this is what I am passionate about. And if a passionate GM is going to be a better GM. And if you have any problems with Pathfinder, and it doesn't sound like you do, it just sounds like there's something else that you want to try. You can voice that I'm having issues with the system mechanically, but that doesn't sound like that's the case here. But really, kind of talk to them about it, be honest, but try to sell them on it. And basically tell them what it is they're going to get with this other game that the current one won't do. And because the natural inclination, if you tell a player, it's like, hey, I want to flip to this other game, is they're going to think about what they're losing. So you really want to frame it as what they will get if they do this. And one of the things they'll get is a passionate game master. But that's sometimes kind of difficult to quantify, even though it's a very big deal. So kind of talk about what it is about this that is appealing, and kind of think about what your individual players like. Because when you're talking to each of them, kind of bring up what you think that person will like about switching to this OSR game, and see if that helps. Because if you can get them excited about it, that's great. But the other thing is probably do some side games. And if you hit the crisis point where you just really freaking hate running what you're running right now because you want to play this other thing and you're actually just unhappy, then you do need to switch. And you just need to say, guys, I can't. I've hit crisis. But once again, I don't think that's the case here. Let's see, I've got a video over talking to your group about switching systems. Might want to check that out because I probably said something a lot better articulated in that one. But good luck, because I've been there myself, and that is rough. So, Bob Hurst, what do I think about RPGs where I fight Nazis? Because I love them. Well, I love them too. Man, if you ever get a chance, it's no longer in print. Check out Hollow Earth Expedition. That's got dinosaurs and shooting Nazis and everything fun. Uses the Ubiquity system, which never really picked up as a big popular system. It's actually really cool. But check out Hollow Earth Expedition. So you might like that. Hey Seth, I'm running my first DM session with Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh. Such a good adventure as part of the larger Ghost of Saltmarsh campaign. Thank you for your videos. They make you chill. Oh, not a problem. Good luck on the game. Sinister Secret is at least the version that I ran, which is 1E. There's so many differences between 1 and 5. I don't know what all they might have changed, but I always like that adventure because it's one, you kind of get this haunted house that's got a mystery involved in it, and then you the pirates and all that stuff. But at least in the old edition, it was a perfectly exciting and challenging game for first level characters, which that back then was always very difficult. Usually it was like, I was to start like third because there was never like anything really good adventuring wise when you're first through second level, is because it's like killing rats. And then Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh, I picked it up and I was like, this is actually a really fun, cool adventure with a lot of cool stuff to do, and it's still perfectly appropriate for characters that are that low level. So I've always had a very big soft spot for it. I think it was actually one of my first D&D reviews I did. But good luck on the game. Have fun. Oh, Andrew P., have I ever done a video on player character deaths? Like any players really feel bad about their character deaths or for another? I have not. I actually have a list of notes to do on that subject. A lot of my videos basically begin as this really jumbled word file that I just group ideas under certain subjects together. And I do have one that's just a pile of thoughts dealing with PC death, ranging from, the it's the most dramatic, catastrophic thing in the world to, the character dies, the rest of the party just loots them and tosses them in a ditch. So there's, I'm trying to hit the kind of spectrum of different ways that's responded to. Eventually, I'll probably do that one. I don't really. I don't know. I have to feel like I have to be able to offer something kind of new on that subject that I'm not really seeing advice. If the advice that I give, I feel really echoes what everyone else says, I'm less inclined to want to make a video on that subject because it just feels like I'm parroting somebody else. So whenever I do that, when it will be because I feel that I have have a different way of approaching it or phrasing something that not really other people are doing or I haven't seen anywhere. But if I don't feel I can do it differently or better, then this is going to sit on the back burner. So everything about writing a traveler story for Mongoose fiction? Not really. Man, I will say though, when it comes to traveler fiction, with the Mongoose, I cannot remember the name of it. It was like a little novella. It had to deal with the widows um, on the world of Thieve. The Mongoose did, and that was a neat little story. And we were about to play an adventure on Thieve, and I kind of wanted to get a little bit of the lore. But if you ever get a chance, a couple of years ago, Mark Miller did a novel called Agent of the Imperium, and I did that one as an audiobook. It's really weird at the beginning until you kind of get into the flow of what he's doing, and it ends up wrapping up really, really, really tightly. And Mark Miller's got just a fantastic imagination, and kind of the scope of that story is far bigger than I thought it would be. I really, really enjoyed it, and that one also really taught me a lot about the lore. So no, I haven't really thought about writing for it. I usually not really fond of writing in other people's worlds because I become too obsessed with not breaking canon. But if you are interested in traveler fiction, it's not Mongoose, but it's from Mark. Is check out Agent of the Imperium. I enjoyed it a lot, but he said first third you're going to be wondering what the hell this is about until it kind of clicks and it suddenly really makes sense, and then a coherent kind of cohesive plot because it's kind of like these vignettes before we get to it, and then it all wraps really well. So I enjoyed it. I recommend that one. Let's see. Wow, already done this one. And this little chat thing, I was always like kind of like going up and down. Please. Question: was it out of line to use the spaceship crash from Life of Ryan to eliminate a problem character and player who just wanted to kill other PCs? You know, I'm a big fan of if you want to punish a player, it's best just to do that around the table versus bring it into the game because uh, it it just very rarely gets the desired result. It feels good. Oh, it feels good at the time, and it's tempting. But I think if you've got the problem player that's just wanting to kill other PCs, that's a player issue, and you should address it with them. Otherwise, the next character is going to do it. Or if you're just wanting to get rid of the player, just get rid of the player. Don't bring them back to a game just to kill their character. Just don't just get them out of there because if they're just off killing other PCs, it's pretty likely that the other players are not enjoying it either. So yeah, when I was younger, I might have done something like the spaceship crash to do it, and the older I get, the less I feel inclined to. If I want to get rid of the player, I'll get rid of the player. But if it's inside the game, or it's an actual problem outside the game world, it's around the table, I want to talk to the player about it because otherwise it's not going to actually solve the problem because it'll just manifest again. And now it might have resentments because you used the game instead of talking to them directly. Matt Johnson. Hey, Matt. What's Cole Preston Smith doing in the time of red? I don't know. I mean, how old would he be at this point? Be in his 60s. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what Mr. Smith is doing now. Who's my favorite of the ancient ones in Call of Cthulhu? I tend to use Nyarlathotep since he seems to interact more with humanity, though the players never know it's him. I like Nyarlathotep. Part of what it is the Thousand Faces. He can do a lot of different things. He has a lot of different roles that he plays. So I like that. Like my favorite, creatures are well, the Great Racy Yith, I think, is my favorite monster, but you don't really have anything with their gods, so there's not really a way you can pull that in. I enjoy Deep Ones a lot, but Dagon and Hydra, you know, not they don't really like call to me as like great villains. So yeah, I'd probably agree. Nyarlathotep would be the one I would say if it was to be my favorite. Yeah, Cthulhu's neat, and I don't know. I think everybody just kind of expects Cthulhu, so like for that actually diminishes the appeal because I'd rather do something that the players are less likely to be familiar with or less likely to be expecting. Problem is you don't want to use Nyarlathotep to the point that becomes the one that they all know and they're expecting. So you still want to pace it out a little bit. Still want to put some other things in there. Question: how do you encourage more natural conversations while role playing? My players turn it to a weird checklist of questions like a video game interaction or interrogation. Um, okay, it depends on exactly what it is they're asking about on that. If we're doing a like an information gathering, so the PCs show up in a town and they want to get some rumors or they want to uh, get informations on this place or this particular person there. A lot of times, what we'll do is for basic information gathering. I don't really role play it that much anymore. We'll kind of like say like, okay, what are you doing? Where are you going? I might do an interaction, but it's like that was one of like a dozen that you did, where I might have them go back and forth with an NPC. But more, we're going to just kind of go through what it was they did, do any necessary roles, give them the information, and then move forward. Uh, but then you have things like the party, and they're just supposed to get to know the people because there's going to be a murder later on, and they need to get some information about all the different people there. So when they walk up to them and say, "What's your name? How old are you? Where are you from? What brought you here?" Blah blah blah. So with that, it's kind of similar. Normally, what we'll do is like they'll tell me who they're going to go talk to. If I don't have somebody, just walk up to them, and we'll make any appropriate social roles that we need to. And they kind of tell me what it is they're going to talk about and what kind of line. I'll usually kind of role play with them a bit, kind of get them used to the voice and the character and stuff like that. But then very often, I have no problem just saying like, okay, well, you guys talk for the next 15 minutes, and over the course of the conversation, you get this stuff from them. That way, we don't have to go through the painful process of them going through a checklist of questions of information that they need from like the dozen NPCs at a party because oh my god, that will very quickly get boring. But at the same time, you still want to have some role play with it. So that's where I say you kind of like do some exchanges, or you do the introduction where they walk up and they're like, oh hello, and they talk to them for a bit. We'll do our social roles to kind of see how well this interaction goes, and then they'll kind of say this is kind of stuff they want. We might role play through a portion of that, a little bit of back and forth, have a little bit of fun, but before it hits that drudgery, it's just kind of like, okay, and we'll fast forward over the course of that. This was the information that you were able to glean. So it's also good that before you do that, find out what information it was that they wanted. That way, that'll be the first information you give them if it is available. And then you can add on anything else because sometimes there's information that they need from an NPC that they don't know they need from an NPC. But that has worked a lot better than just going through the entire process of the conversation because, as you said, it kind of becomes this checklist, and no one enjoys that. No one in the room enjoys that. So why do it? Question: the opinion on MERP? Nope. Sorry, never played it. Meat question. Basically, the players didn't want to get into Call of Cthulhu because of how squishy their characters were. Should I play Pulp Cthulhu? Characters are still squishy, not as squishy as Call of Cthulhu. I mean, it depends what the players want. If the players are wanting a game that is like the epic fantasy like D&D, where you get your hit points back after a rest, or we've got a cleric that can heal you up, and you wait in a battle and you've got 60 hit points and you're taking down swaths of bad guys. Cthulhu's never going to give that to you. It's just not. So even with Pulp Cthulhu, where you're not as squishy, you're still not going to be able to do that. And so be upfront with your players that's the case. Now, Pulp Cthulhu is a game where, yeah, you can dive out a window with pistol in each hand. You can do a couple cool little pulp talents. You're going to have more hit points than the bad guys. You're going to heal a lot faster than Call of Cthulhu characters. And there is the save yourself from death option if you've got enough luck points. A lot of people say, it makes you immune to death. Like, no, it doesn't. Because either one, will sometimes still spend themselves below 30 luck, or if they do have to do that, it drops their luck to 0. It can take a couple sessions before that luck hits that safe zone again. But the big thing that makes the characters tougher isn't that. It is. Thought that was silent. It is. It has to be a serious injury is the one that takes them to 0. And so if there are a bunch of injuries that are like 2 or 3 hit points, that's not going to kill them, even if it takes them down to 0. They'll have to be unconscious and be taking damage after that. But if they've taken a lot of damage and then they get hit for 4 hit points and they drop, they're going to be fine. Even if they've already taken a serious injury, it has to be that last one that drops them that does it. And that's what makes those characters tougher in Pulp. But in a game where you've got impaling strikes and all that, it's not uncommon that the one that brings them to 0 will be that powerful. But talk to them about it first. But for us, that has been the big saver. Is as much as we like Call of Cthulhu, all of us around the table still want to have games where our characters go and kick ass and take names. And Pulp Cthulhu allowed us to have kind of the best of both worlds in being able to still be squishy while still being a little bit more than the average person, and be able to kick some ass and have some just really wild kind of superhuman style combats. So it's worth considering, but if they're wanting it to be like D&D, it still is not going to do that. So, but good luck. Richard Garcia, hello, love your content. Been watching you for a while. You mentioned that Fantasy Flight Star Wars was not to your liking. Would love to know your thoughts. Yeah, the dice thing. I just never got into the symbols of the dice. I find that I just found the dice system goofy. A lot of it starts making it feel very board gamey to me. I like it in theory, and there's a lot of game mechanics out there that I really like in theory, and then when we actually play it, I don't like it in practice. The Fantasy Flight system where we've got our dice and there's the 4 main symbols, and there's the light side and the dark side, and this cancels this cancels this, and we get so many of these, you get these effects. That's I end up looking at those, and the problem is when you roll the dice, the symbols are never straight up and down. They're spun all these different directions, and so my brain is like trying to go through all these symbols, trying to count them up, and subtract this, and then we take into the fact that we also got this rare symbol does something else. I just never got it. It felt like it just started bogging it down for me, and it just never felt natural. My buddy runs it. If he wants to run it, this weekend, I'll go play. Oh, not Saturday. I'm already running, but I'll play in it. But it's nothing that like I get excited about playing with them. The game itself is not something that excites me. We have fun. I enjoy my character. We have a lot of laughs. We have a lot of adventures. But it's not a system where it's like, oh my god, I want to run this. It's like. So, and that was part of the reason I picked up the D6 Star Wars. Is I actually like to run him, but I don't want to use the Fantasy Flight Star Wars system just because I find it so just weird. Like I said, I love it in concept. I have not liked it in execution. And we are almost about an hour and a half, so I should probably end this pretty soon. Let's see. JD House, Shadow over Leningrad. I'm a Russian history buff. I haven't run it. I will let you know. I don't think it's actually like an amazing adventure. I do like the setting of the fact that it's taking place in the late 20th Soviet Russia. It is definitely got some of the issues that I've had with a lot of the old Goodman Games Age of Cthulhu adventures. It's a pulp adventure, but it was before Pulp Cthulhu came out, so it was just a Call of Cthulhu adventure that was probably way too tough for a regular Call of Cthulhu character. But you can play with Pulp with like just beef up the bad guys and Pulp talents and hit points, and you're done, which is what I'll be doing. So it looks neat. I look forward to it. I kind of like the idea of just changing the setting up that drastically, especially in that time period where you've got like the OGPU, their secret police that might just be following the characters as just foreigners, seeing what they're up to, kind of just the way that the society works, because you've got like those weird levels of corruption which the cultists, the bad guys, have really worked themselves into. What I did before I really got into running it is I revisited the old Dennis Wheatley book, Forbidden Territory, which is about some characters that go into Soviet Russia in the 1930s, and it was written in the 1930s, so it was like very current. This is it's kind of Wheatley's way of saying like this is what it's like there right now, and it addressed like the difficulty they had getting around, because they were usually assigned guides, which were usually secret police agents to keep an eye on them and steer them from going to certain directions that would allow them to go home and tell stories that it wasn't a utopia, or see if they're doing anything suspicious, like they might be spies. Really going into weaponry, and then that one it talks about what they had to do to sneak some weapons over into the Soviet Union. So that was a cool little bit of research. On whenever I've finished it and I get around to review, I'll talk about that. But it looks fun enough to run. We'll see how it goes. See, any experience with Pirates of Drenex? No, Pirates of Drenex never really appealed to me. I know a lot of people love it. I'm not a fan of the Trojan Reach. It just was never a section that really, I don't know, it really never really inspired me. So I gravitated to the Great Rift. So never played Drenex. I've got it. I enjoyed at the time. It was only spiking all the information on the Aslan, but no. The F. Bards Chronicles question has experienced D&D players. What is the best system to try next? Depends what you're up to, like what you want. I try to show my group that this one edition of one game doesn't need to bear the burden of all our fantasies. Oh, I feel that one. Part of what it is go for, if a lot of the times with stuff like when people will play one game and they try to make every game like everything they want to fit that system. Which we got a lot of people will do that with 5th edition, but there's a lot of other games people do that too. What is it that they're wanting to do? And then find the game that is designed for that. Or if it is something where, like, do they want squishier characters? They want one where a character dying is like a very real possibility. Like a fight with just a random goon on the street could be a fatality for them, because we're in an age of guns and we have low hit points. And that's just how it works. If that's what they want, then yeah, we could go with. Well, I'm always going to recommend Call of Cthulhu, but it's a little more appropriate. We went with Cyberpunk back when we were younger, and that became our breakaway point. So if you're wanting something like that, then yeah, you could go with Cyberpunk, which is currently red, or Call of Cthulhu. Or if you're wanting something that is more narrative flow, where you could try something like Blades in the Dark, where they're all thieves, and it's got the different mechanics, so we could do flashbacks and that sort of thing. So you kind of see what all it is that your players want, what it is they're interested in, and kind of find the game that fits that. Because whatever I tell you, it might not fit your taste. If I'm like, well, play Traveler, like sci-fi, that's a terrible answer. So figure out what it is you guys like, or what it is you would want to do. One of the keys was when we needed to go to skill-based games, it's because we had been house ruling D&D so badly because we were trying to turn it into a different game entirely. And if that's what you're doing, go with a game that already does that. Or if you guys are actually all perfectly happy with it and you want to just try something else out there, see what personal tastes say. I am more inclined to go with a game that flips genres. So a lot of people are like, it's like, oh, let's try something other than D&D, and they do Pathfinder. It's like still the fantasy, my fantasy genre hasn't moved. I don't think that's as effective as like grabbing them and saying like, okay, we're going to do Wild West, and now we're riding out of horses, and we've got our 45s on our belts, and we're going to do some Wild West adventures. I think that flip of genre is a pretty big part of that, because it gets them out of the mindset of whatever game it is that they're playing. So they're playing D&D. I would not do another high fantasy game like that, because I would like to almost do a shock of something totally different, both mechanics and theme and genre and setting and all of that. So good luck, but answer really is, what is it you guys like? And how are we doing? We'll wrap this up in about 10 minutes. I think some of these, I can't tell if I've answered before. People are just asking the same question. Dorcata Sloan. We'll take it for $10. Not unnecessary. But thank you. Jack Samaritan, you're considering re-uploading or remaking your old list videos. They're my favorite. I've got a couple list videos that I want to do. I don't really like doing them, mostly because if some of the topics, when I start thinking about it, they need more to them, and more than a list video can actually give. With the list video, even if I drag it out to like a 15-minute video and I'm like the 5 best, the 5 worst, or whatever, I've got an average of 3 minutes per topic. And I think it started with when I talked about the role play terrorist. Yeah, I looked down. I was like, this is a type of situation that actually warrants way more than 3 minutes, and that became the topic of the entire video. And a lot of the times when I do kind of go through my lists, the current ones that I kind of think about are not like the old ones, because the old ones, the problem was I talked about very large topics and I didn't give them enough time to do it, and I was unhappy with it. I mean, yeah, it gets clicks, but I didn't like it. A lot of people got the wrong impression from stuff, which was justified, and so not really. I recently, when I did the one over theme campaigns in the 13th Warrior, I talked about like every single thing I've talked about in here. I have gone back and done an expanded video on, because all of those required that. So the lists that I still have that I think will be lists are usually, I think one of them is just over table etiquette of types of players around your table, and just really bad table etiquette stuff that they do, such as the guy that's always showing up late, or person that doesn't contribute to any of the food but is glad to eat all the food. That sort of stuff like that, of just not really in-game things. But that's going to be kind of how I'll be looking at list videos more going forward, because a lot of the other topics I think need to be expanded on in a way that we can't just do in kind of a quick little 5-minute, throw it a skit and then move on, because we're not actually really doing anything to address or help solve any potential problems. And I don't think that's helpful. So I don't even know if that answers the question. Okay. Owen Kinkle, what's your opinion on refusing a character's name? So many players that can name their character. Arkin Ford for my hard sci-fi game. If you're wanting to do a very serious game, I'm more inclined to like tell them that we need to take this one seriously, not do like joke names. Most of the time, I just simply roll my eyes and say, "Okay, this is what we're doing," because it's not necessarily serious. Because like in our Pulp Cthulhu Two-Headed Serpent game, I had a player that played a bounty hunter named Boba. And that same player, when we did Mystery BTSHT 365, had his rocker named Vince. One thing I never talked about in the video, his last name was Neil because he had just watched Dirt on Netflix. So, but those weren't serious high role play games. I was fine with it. But if we were doing one, and no, I would say, like, we need to take it seriously, and part of that's to make the player aware. That's what it is. Because if you allow a player to do a joke character name, just the name, in the game, they're still going to assume that yes, we're going to cut up, and we're going to have a lot of fun, and we don't need to take this all seriously. Uh, so if that's definitely something that you don't want to have in this particular game, we're going to do like deep role play. Yes, talk to him about it, but give him the reasoning. If you just say no and don't give the reasoning, that doesn't go over well. Joke characters are a different thing. Joke characters very rarely last long. The joke usually gets old, and then the player will get bored with it. But this is just a case of naming. So explain to the player why. Yeah, but also, if this isn't going to be a game that you're going to be like getting like really uh, do like the deep role play of really into the character psyche, and we're just going to go and we're going to have fun and shoot lasers and whatnot, is the joke name going to actually do anything? If it's a good character, they've got a stupid name. It's a good character, it's got a stupid name. And I don't have a problem with it as long as the character is a good character and appropriate. I'll roll my eyes, but it's not anything I'm going to get twisted up about. If that's the way the player still wants to kind of exert their little joke in there, that's fine. I let them have it. But really, and most games that would be fine. Very few games I've had where I would be like, no, serious only. As long as it's not just, yeah, I don't know, some weird like curse thing or whatnot. But if it's just a silly name, I'll let them have it most of the time, with only very few exceptions. But if you do say no to it, make sure that you do express your reasoning. Or if you have a problem with express your reasoning, but also decide for yourself, is this actually a problem, or is this something that just it kind of annoys you, but isn't a problem? If the player wants and the player's happy and it's not a problem, I'm more inclined just to go with it. Once made the mistake of allowing a pimp named Slickback in my short zombie. Yeah, yeah. Usually, stuff like zombie survival games, you'll end up with some goofy names because I don't know, we've always had them like they were very goofy. Um, Whatever consider more module writing advice, I've often thought it'd be the other side of the coin for GMs, especially since you're getting published stuff out there. Um, I don't know if I've got enough yet for a video on module writing advice, because I was trying to make it very general. If I was going to do something like how to write a Call of Cthulhu module, I could go on that. Or if how to write a Traveler module, which is the other ones I've done, I could do that. But as far as blanket general, no. And also, but though with those genres, like so like I've done my game like or a video on like how to run a heist. I talked about a heist. So if I wanted to write a module about a heist, I would just take them and put them together. So I don't know if I really have enough to cover or to warrant a full other video. I mean, otherwise I could like pop up for like 30 seconds, be like, oh yeah, hey, cool, here's one tip, and then be done. But yeah, not enough to really you consider worthy of a second video on that subject. Just because I am keeping it very general. If I was going to go to specific systems or specific themes, uh, yeah, but I think I'd rather just do a video over specific systems and specific themes, and not about just writing a module for them. So, Kevin For the people, can I do my experience with Cyberpunk Shadowrun? Don't really have much experience with Shadowrun. I liked my sci-fi, liked my fantasy, and we ended up playing Cyberpunk, and that was also what I was introduced to first. So don't really have any opinion on it. So there, don't need a video on it. Continuing campaigns, a star ripe, seem to find quickly tips. Questions about he has trouble with continuing campaigns. They start all right, seem to flounder quickly. Tips. Well, a bit really depends on why it's floundering. If your game is if it's too broad in scope, or you didn't tell the players up front what it was we were going to do, if they don't have enough of a hook to keep going through it, there's a lot of reasons it could flounder. So I don't really have like a magic key for you. I am personally, when it comes to campaigns, more of the adventure of the week episodic type, and I just have to deal with my own short attention span. If I want to try something here, I want to try something there. I don't want to just commit to a giant story, because I always fear that if I do commit to like a giant sprawling 2-year campaign, is this something a story I'm still going to care about then? And I've done them and I've had fun, but the other time I've also had it where I've just hit a kind of a point in the campaign that I don't care, or my players don't really care, and it just kind of fizzles out. So I prefer an episodic style. So that's really good. How's my collection of WEG Star Wars material coming along? Not really a high priority for me. Any thoughts on the Traveler Highguard 2022 update they've announced? They announced it. I'll see what it has. I don't have any advanced copy or anything, so I don't know. I'll see. Let's see. Okay. How excited are you? I don't know if this is for me or the audience of the upcoming Traveler game in Glass Cannon. I'm pretty excited. We played last night. Look, I look forward to seeing how people take it. The first episode is just character creation, and we actually didn't even finish character creation in that one because we were all coming up with our characters at the same time. But then, when the adventure itself started, we've already done a couple of those. So I'm enjoying it. I'm looking forward to getting back because Matt left us at a freaking cliffhanger. So I'm looking forward to finding out what happens next. So hopefully audiences will too. Am I playing or running any games at Gen Con this year? From Red Book Out. I am getting to play Gen Con, and I'm really freaking happy about that. I went to Gen Con a few years ago, and I was with the Writer Symposium, and my schedule worked out that I'd never had an opening where I could play. My panel schedule was set up in a way that just wasn't a window, except for there was one, but it would have been I finished the game way over in the convention hall, and within 5 minutes I would have to physically sprint all the way to where the Writer Symposium was. And I was like, no. So I never played. So this year, I'm doing a game of Cyberpunk Red, doing Cult Divinity Lost, Bluebeard's Bride, Star Wars 2nd edition, and it's all that I'm remembering off the top of my head, but I think there is something else that we're doing. So we're gonna get to play a few games there. Yeah, I'm not running any of them, just playing. GURPS. Going to switch from D&D to GURPS. I grew up on GURPS. Do you have nostalgia systems that take you back? That was what it was for me for like old AD&D. Is I played that for so long when I was younger. I don't really miss the rules as much as but the art always makes me very nostalgic, or certain little things. But it is also I also understand the limitations and the problems with that game. So a lot of the times I'm not really inclined to go back and play it, but I can still have like a really warm feeling toward it. But nothing that I just have to return to. Jane, what are my thoughts on Dark Sun? I've ever played anything in it. Man, Dark Sun was awesome way back when. Yeah, a friend of mine used to run us through a Dark Sun game. I had a Thrycreen, and that was it was a cool setting. I really loved about Dark Sun the fact that it was so not like any of the other D&D settings at all. I always found Spelljammer like goofy, and just kind of I don't know, just this kind of like weird sort of thing. So Spelljammer was never really the weird setting that got me, but Dark Sun, that shit was cool. With the fact it didn't have that kind of European fantasy basis. It was this essentially a fantasy post-apocalyptic world, and then of course it had the art from Brahm, and his art for that was brilliant. So yeah, I had a lot of fun in Dark Sun. I never really read any of the Dark Sun stuff because my friend was dungeon mastering it, so I would read whatever sections from his books that he thought I would like, but I never actually like went out and picked him up because that was the game he was running us through. And then on other days, I would run him through the game I was running. So I have played it. I always had a soft spot for it. So it was cool. Lika says, do I use terrain for Cyberpunk? And do you think it's really important for setting up the vibe and knowing where everyone is as a GM? I never got into terrain, and the reason being is I grew up doing a lot of model railroads when I was a kid, and I know that if I really got into terrain, it would own me. And yeah, I love looking at it. I love when I see like some of the setups that people do. It looks freaking fantastic, but I don't have the physical space to hold all of those. No, so we just use the board, the battle map, and I'll draw it out with plexiglass, and we might sometimes throw in different props for it, like toy cars. Um, I've got a pair of dumpsters, that I picked up, old plastic dumpsters. The lids come up, but not like walls and streets and fire hydrants and all that stuff. It's just a couple little things I may or may not throw in. But we will use the board to show where people are, kind of in relation to one another. Never really been much for specifically counting out specific distances, but as much as like kind of showing where everybody is, where the bad guys are. You got cover over there, you got somebody over there, you got to run across the street to get to this. There's so many people in the bad guy. So yes, we did use that for Cyber. We use that for just about every game. But never got into terrain just because that's just a lot of stuff. And so I knew it on me. I mean, I have my miniatures. I enjoy painting them. The other thing that I found when we started doing some terrain, or at least set pieces, in we were doing Traveler, and one of my players had gotten a 3D printer, so he got a bunch of cool like stuff, like control panels and whatnot that we used in a combat, and I realized that I had difficulty seeing what was going on the table because there were characters behind stuff. So like I didn't have a line of sight on all of the characters because the terrain of the big engine and apparati and panels and whatnot were blocking my own line of sight. So it required more of like stand up, and kind of like change your angle looking down the table to see the whole thing going on, which is kind of a more of a war game thing, really. So I kind of found that I was like, oh, it kind of diminished the experience for me just being able to sit there and look down versus if we just drawn it out on the board. So, anyways, that's my thoughts on terrain. I think they're cool. I love looking at it. I love seeing images that people share online. It's like, oh, it's so cool. The torches flicker. It's awesome, but not really my thing. Never used miniatures for Cyberpunk? Damn, man. It's awesome. Um, have I ever considered using how I use miniatures as a GM? Yes. I actually do have a video I want to do over that because I think I don't know. I think there's a lot of weird misconceptions over using minis, Call of Cthulhu or not, that I find I don't know strange because for us, one players they love having a little representations of themselves and whatnot, and that's fun. But it's I think they just help for visualizing everything else. Also, as a GM, man, geez, it is so great to know where the PCs are and what's going on. Hey, spammy. Let's get rid of you here. There we go. And but yeah, so I do want to do one over miniatures and how we use them in other games, especially Call of Cthulhu, where we do use them. But yeah, we use them just about everything. Question: Theater of the mind versus maps. I think I was pretty well answering that with my discussion of minis. Um, what's weird is there is this odd concept that people have when they talk about theater of the mind versus maps, that it has to be one or the other, like as if you say I use maps, they imagine that I draw a map for absolutely every single location that they go to and every single encounter, or like encounter with npcs or whatnot, like we're always stopping the game and drawing maps and pulling out miniatures. No, that would be silly. Uh, so we use the miniatures and maps when it enhances the game. Uh, so I will very often have the miniatures that I need for the adventure pulled out, and they're usually behind my screen. But I sometimes just don't even use them. We'll just theater the mind through it, or maybe I'll sketch out a map. We never put the miniatures on it because they just wanted to know the shape of a building or the shape of a street corner or whatnot. Uh, but the whole theater of the mind or this, I always feel like the extremes. Why the hell does it have to be an either or? I think that my last video talked about if you take anything to extreme, it ends up hurting. So yeah, I use whatever is best for the situation, and that's it. Also enjoy miniatures. Oh, Foundry Virtual Tabletop. Yeah, it's some guy go on there and talk about like, why don't you just use Roll20 instead of miniatures? It's cheaper. It's like, wow, you think playing online is just like playing in a group with your friends? That's sad. And tell you what, we are at an hour and 57 minutes, so I think I better wrap this thing up. I think I'm on up here. Question: How do you do theater of the mind, cosmic core, very far removed common tropes, the non-Euclidean geometry, lunar style landscapes, etc.? Um, if you're simply describing it, you can talk about just you're looking at a direction and there's the curve. People might suddenly fall down. Like I think they talked about in the story Call of Cthulhu, where a guy fell down a slope that wasn't there because of the non-Euclidean geometry going on. So yeah, if it's theory of mind, we will describe it. If it's done out on a board, we're using that as an entry because we've also had to do it where gravity is going around in a sphere or that sort of thing. We will have, because we just use wet erase markers. We'll kind of say like, this area is where things will change, and the players will get it. It's like, you're running, gravity's running along the inside of this one passageway. Then a lot of times we'll just kind of like unroll it, or just kind of show us the width of the passageway, and we'll just gotta say like, oh well, they're up at the top, and we may have a marker on them to indicate that, or we might just remember. So it depends on what it is that we're doing. Okay, let's find a good one. Mr. Cult, what is my favorite horror tabletop role playing game, and why is it Cult of Many Lost? I really love Cult. I really loved. Was it Screams and Whispers? Was the kind of their GM's guide that was more like a master's class on like horror theory. That's that book. Brilliant. I'm reading it very slowly because I'm going to soak it in. Uh, that is a game that is pure horror. Call of Cthulhu is usually considered a horror game. That is still my favorite game, but uh, Cult is a horror game. It can't not be. So yes, I enjoy that one immensely. And sounds like my wife has returned home. So I tell you what. Let me just find one last one here. Uh, Any chance to be doing a Call of Cthulhu game to keep her alive? The TDF News team was awesome. Probably not. That just doesn't appeal to me as of running uh, any of those. Like when we did that thing with Glass Cannon and Troy was running. Troy was so good at keeping up with them that I'm like, just I enjoyed it, but I don't really feel a desire to record any of our sessions and have kind of that added stress of people, like, oh, if I make a mistake and people talking about like, oh, he doesn't know what he's doing because he made some error or second guessing, like with my own group. Like, I don't want them to ever second guess my players because I'd be upset if they did that. So no, I don't have any desire to at all. It's actually the thought of it repulses me. So no, you're not gonna see any recordings of me running games. And another question on that. Yeah, if our group recorded sessions, we'd have to redact a lot of it for the sanity of our audience. Oh yeah, yeah. One of the actually, I could probably finish on this thought. When you know your game is being recorded, whether you're doing it online or you're around a table, you will naturally consider the audience in things you do. Things like dead air, play it up for the audience. Not say certain things because people might take it the wrong way. Try to make yourself entertaining as possible. Keep on your posture, that sort of thing. And even if it's on a subconscious level, you still change how you play because you are aware of the camera and you are aware of the audience that's there. And part of the reason that my players and I, my group and I, why we do what we do, is that is our time to not have a single obligation to anyone except for us. We don't want to worry about anyone else. We just want to be a bunch of old friends being goofy and having a lot of fun. And that is the whole reason we do it. So having a camera in the room would take away from that. It would diminish the reason we're even doing it in the first place. So that's not going to happen. And then, this is a question of like, well, why don't you run people that aren't your normal group? It's like, okay. One, I've already said the idea of it just doesn't appeal to me in the least. But now like run the people that I don't have the same level of just comfort. We just play off each other as well, and have that be where it goes out for the audience, the masses to consume. Do you think that's what it's like when I run my group? You think that is what it would be like? Because it's not. And the thing that would be out there wouldn't even be an accurate representation of what our games are like when we just play for ourselves. And my doing anything like that, I would only do because people wanted it. But what they want is they want to see what our our real games are really like. And that is not possible to capture just because when you're aware that there is a camera in the room, you're you're going to respond to it. You're going to react to it. You are going to carry yourself in a way to play it up, or what we say. We wouldn't be able to pause a game halfway through because one of the players is like, "Oh my god, I didn't tell you this thing. It's going on with my job," and we kind of pause and we hear what's going on with their life. We wouldn't be able to have those like kind of like moments of just old friends, and it doesn't appeal to me. It doesn't sound in any way like something I want to do. So that's my answer, which kind of evidently makes me very weird in the YouTube tabletop creators. That it's nothing that I want to do, but it isn't. I like to be able to give you my advice from the games, tell you my stories, and have people go and make their own. But I don't think watching a simulation of what it's like whenever I run a game is going to be remotely helpful for anyone. So the idea of it just doesn't appeal to me. Anyways, that is it. I think we just hit 2 hours and 5 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. So, anyways, everybody, thank you so much. This was fun, and I know I missed a billion jillion questions on there. So what I'm going to do is once this loads up and shows up on YouTube as like the recorded video, I'll go back through it, and I'll usually kind of in the comments answer certain questions that I missed, especially super chats, because I missed like a lot of those, I think. And but anyways, I had fun. Thank you for just kind of blowing a couple hours with me, and have a good day.